again, we talk a lot now about posture and position and all these things. There's a whole course on posturology and the brain. Positions matter. It gives the brain the opportunity to find the right information, to make the right decisions on muscle contractions, timing of contractions, the length of contractions, motor unit activation, and all that stuff. Okay, so this was Jay's philosophy. This is a one-legged squat. So the first thing that jumps out to me on this position right here, they all look the same. So you circle back. That's another one of his fundamental belief systems is if I'm doing something in the weight room, and I wrote an article on this, posture and position. The article's got to be 15 years old. And what it basically said was when I would go around to different high schools across the country and take a look at their strength training programs, everybody looked different. Like an Olympic lift was disgusting. Like you couldn't tell it was resembling anything you were trying to have an adaptation for. It was disgusting. The squats were awful. Everything was terrible. When I look at that picture, the message is the exact same. And then Jay would say, you can make that predictable because you know the body's in the right position. There's not really a different way to do it, right? So he talks about 90-degree angles. So that's what a lunge looks like right there. That's the simplest way a lunge looks like. And when you're talking about 90 degrees, the human screws that up, right? So what we mean is, see this line right here? That's got to be the 90-degree angle right there. Because everybody can get into that position. If I go back, not everybody can get in that position. Okay, but this needs to be 90 degrees. Make sense? All right, so that's one of the reasons behind that 90-degree philosophy is everybody looks the exact same. Jay thought to himself, if everybody looks the exact same, the message is the exact same, I can have a predictable response. Because positions are varied everywhere in the weight room, how do you predict the response? Lunge, front leg should be pulling into position with the hamstring, knee in alignment with the toe. If you're pushing into the ground, you're defeating the purpose. You should be pulling the ground underneath her, okay? Maximal downward position would be your knee has a negative angle to you, so your hip is sitting underneath your knee if you could do that. So your knee angle is sitting above your hips. Your hips are under your knee. Okay, so if you look at this screen, here's the knee joint, there's the hip, the knee is above the hip. Okay, we are lengthening this muscle on the backside 90 degrees back here. Okay, and then the whole 90-degree angle is this. Make sense? That's an iso extreme lunge. Now, snapshot in your mind, you can end in that position. You can start up top and end in that position. How you get there is the magic of the program. And you'll find that out tomorrow when we talk about DB stuff. Same thing, he would get in a lunge, but he'd get there 50 million different ways to roam. And that's where the training effect comes in.
And Dan, again, just from a coaching standpoint, we're trying to leg curl that leg through the floor. Like you're almost trying to dig a trench underneath that leg. So the actual action that's going on and the intent is a leg curl.
Right. Yep. So if you look at the girl here on the far left, she's loaded a little bit with a bar in between her legs, but I'm not going to load her to pull her out of position. I tell people, now her head should be back here. Look, can you see my cursor? Her ear should be in line with her shoulders and with her hips. That's what I'm looking for, okay? This kid is at the top of his lunge starting to go down. My son is trying to balance a paper plate on vacation on his head because his torso is always a mess. So we're trying to focus on that part of it. But if you look at the angle back here, those are the angles that we should have with the ankles.
I think one thing, and I know this isn't a big DB thing, but if you look at Colt is Dan's son, look at the big toe work. That's, we're going to talk about this later on. That's a forefoot rocker, and that's something a lot of people miss. And if you can't get to that big toe, you're losing a part of your propulsion system. And that's kind of what I've been working on for the last 6 months. But that's coming down the road.
Okay, so that's the lunge. Anybody have any? Well, I can't see the question.
It's going to be the back big toe. So I can't use my cursor, but the back foot big toe right there.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see people that have shitty feet, and they'll put the top of their foot on top of the box or on the floor.
Look at this one is not as good. Okay, and I tell you why. See this right here? That's what Chris is talking about. This, I mean, I know you can't see it great. It's not, because you know what this is? This is a hockey player. So his foot is locked in a boot all the time.
And even the girl on the left, look at how she's coming off the side of her foot. So she's actually learning to push off the side of that foot. So her propulsion point would probably be her third and fourth toe.
Now, this is what's great about this system of training. This is Jay's system. This isn't my system. This isn't Chris's system. Now, I love the ISO Extreme Lunge. I love what Chris is talking about. So now we start to coach different things in the lunge that make more impact on the things that we want to do as sprinters and jumpers and bipedal locomotion, right? So I don't think Jay did that stuff. He basically said, if you're pulling with your front foot and you have a 90-degree angle with that back ankle, you're in a good enough position for me.
If you look in the left picture of the girl, look at the girl behind the girl in purple. Look at the difference in their ankle position, and look at how much ankle rocker and forefoot rocker she's got.
So now Jay would say, when you'd send him video, everybody's different. That would make him crazy. He wants everybody the exact same. So I go back to that position. That's kind of what he was looking for, because that was his way of feeling comfortable that I know that the message being sent and the training effect is going to be the exact same. Right, so this is an ISO dip shrug, okay? So what he's doing, and notice the dip bar position too. It's not as wide as most bars. It's a little bit narrower. We like that. So he's just getting up. His arms are locked out. And I tell people he's sitting up on top of his lats, okay? And he's just holding that position. And what ends up happening is, as you fatigue, your shoulders will drop and you'll just sit right in on your lats. It's actually a lat exercise, okay? So you're lengthening your pectorals and you're holding that position on locked arms. And as you fatigue, you're moving into almost a shrug position with your lats.
And Dan's going to talk about it in the push-up as well, but really that the ability to keep your shoulders down is really huge. And I think especially coaching high school kids, they have no scapular control in anything they do. And that's why we get injuries in the shoulders and the arms, and that even comes into lower back and hips, is that inability to hold that scap in place. So when you go through Jay's stuff here with the dip, the push up, and the chin, it's huge. In fact, I just typed here, if you've got 2 countertops in your kitchen, I do that dip all the time while I'm waiting for things to cook. I just go up and hold myself, and I push my shoulders away from my ears and try to hold that position.
Yeah, I mean, again, what I really love about being the age I'm at in terms of the training history that I've had to follow and learn from is that you hear these certain quotes from people at certain points in their career and you go, holy shit, did they know what this person was talking about? But this person was way before that person. And how did they know? So like, I remember being at a Swiss conference probably 20 some odd years ago. And who's the guy? I think he works for Onnit now. The bald guy, Joe DeFranco. Is that his name? Yeah, I think that's his name. He said that if you can do pull-ups and you have great body weight strength, you should be pretty fast, right? So the person who can do the most pull-up, then you go back to Peter Weyand's, mass specific, all that stuff. It's just interesting concepts that tend to go through everybody's different philosophies, and there's these key points. I love the isometric push-up. The extreme isometric push-up. I love it. I use it all the time, because I think it teaches you how to do a lot of different things with the upper body. And one of those things is lengthening the pectorals. Okay. So when a lot of people talk about posture, they talk about pulling their shoulders back. Okay. So if this is your posture, let's get better posture and we pull our shoulders back. Well, we're starting to realize with all this research that's out there on neurology is that posture is set by your brain, your eyes, your feet, your horizon, all that stuff. And that's a whole different lecture in itself. But Jay would always talk about the way to get to that position isn't pulling your shoulders back. It's lengthening your pectorals, keeping your pectorals long. And anything less than that, you're in a fatigue state. So when Steve Davidson, who was the creator of that inertial impulse machine, when he created those exercises, he said, listen, here's the deal. We want to fatigue the muscles being in perfect position and posture. So when the brain does get tired, when you're out doing your sport, it goes back to that fundamental quality of lengthen the pectorals, be in perfect position. So for the push-up, you are going to, I love to start it up top. And if you guys look at my Twitter page, I put up a couple exercises. The guy starts in the top position of the push-up, and he should be pulling himself into the ground. So the thought process is, if this is the ground right here, I'm doing this with my hands. That's the intent. The intent is to pull the hands back, okay? Most people just go and they just hang on and they hold. First couple of videos I sent to Jay, he's like, all you're doing is hanging on. You're hanging on at the end range. That's nothing about what an isometric extreme push-up is. What he wants you to do is continuously thought. The intent is to pull your hands directly off the box, which will never happen because of gravity and all the pressure on your hands. So the guy on the right-hand side here, who was a professional football player, is I made him curl his hands underneath, and I tell him, try to pick the box up off the ground, because now I know I'm going to get bicep activation and lat activation. And then the whole time, I'm pulling myself as far down as I possibly can go. And when I feel like I've reached the end range, I'm going to continue to pull and think about that pull. The minute I lose the intent of the pull, I stop. Questions on that? The iso lunge, this is a real shitty picture.
Hey, Dan, all those pictures everyone's got for the push-up, everyone's got their feet elevated, correct?
Yeah, but do I do it without them elevated? Yeah, absolutely. Because if I'm doing it, like when I explained it on my Twitter, we didn't have any boxes. We're just outside. So we're going with the chest an inch off the ground, but the intent is still to continue to work the pull muscles into the ground, which are biceps and lats and shoulders down.
And how are you having people breathe through all of this?
Well, now I have them breathe through the tongue on the roof of their mouth, and I have them breathe through their nose.
And how long do you have them hold for?
Depends on what I'm trying to do that day. If kids are just learning.
Can you repeat, first of all, can you repeat the breathing? You broke up.
So for me, breathing is all about breathing through your nose. Very rarely, unless I'm doing some type of diaphragm reset, do I want people breathing out of their mouth. Okay, we're designed to breathe through our nose. I always tell people in all my clinics and lectures, get the book Oxygen Advantage. You have to. It's part of understanding that network of nitric oxide and all those things. And I got to tell you, Jay used to talk about that a long time ago. And I don't know how or why, but breathe through your nose. How can you enhance that? Put water in your mouth. It'll make you breathe through your nose. A lot of people tape, I was talking to them, I've taped people's mouths shut. I don't do that anymore. I just put water in their mouth. So the pull, it's all about the pull into position. So the skater lunge, this one's really hard to, can you guys see that picture? Chris, can you see it?
Yeah, it's kind of distorted.
Okay. And it has to be because the file was so.
Is that Phil? It looks like Phil.
Okay, so notice this. There's a flat back. You can see that, right? That flat back right here is the most important thing in the lunge, or in the skater lunge. And the skater lunge is simply this. You've seen people do plyometrics in that skater position where they go back and forth. All I'm doing is pausing the repetition when they get to one foot. I'm crossing the other leg behind the knee of the front foot. I'm still pulling myself into position with the hamstring of the foot that's on the ground. My head is in line with my spine, and I'm holding that spot. So all my change of direction muscles are working appropriately at that time. So that was his thought process behind that. He goes, we don't do change of direction. We don't get out on the field and run and do that. I teach them the end range. When they get out there and do it, they know what to do. Okay, so that's the ISO skater lunge. And this is one that I don't see a lot on the internet that was a huge part of Jay's program. Okay, so he would do it a variety of different ways. He'd hold that position for 3 minutes, hold it for a minute. You could hold it for 10 seconds, bound to the other leg in a normal skater plyometric move, hold that for 10 seconds, and then go back the other way. But he'd want you to understand what the end range was and how to stop it, how to control it.
And so, Dan, are you saying you want his back flat parallel to the ground?
Correct. Foot on that line just to show people. Everything should be a straight line. Because you'll get kids that'll get into position, they're like this, they can't even get their back straight. So you're teaching them the end range.